Square Enix says if Japanese developers imitate Western games, they will not be able to produce good ones. And this was coming from President Yosuke Matsuda. And I think he doesn't know, and somebody should tell him that Forspoken is a game that Square Enix makes. And the game doesn't look like a Japanese game. It looks like a Ubisoft game. And I'm not saying that just because it has a black character. But nothing about the story, nothing about the gameplay tells me that it's a Japanese game. But I agree, if Japanese developers imitate Western games, they will not be able to produce good ones. First of all, Japanese games are different. They have their own style. And that's why a lot of people buy them. If they try to be more American, then a lot of people will not be interested anymore. If you know a lot of people like your game and your Japanese style, then why would you want to imitate the Western games? And for real now, why does Square Enix say this? Dude, I'm from Romania. You don't see a lot of black people here. And when you see them, they're usually at the university or they are playing professional sports. So it's almost impossible to find a black guy in my country. So of course, when you see a movie, a game, a TV show, it's a very small possibility to have a black guy. So I think the same thing you expect from Japan or Korea or China. Because even if you may see some black people in Japan, Korea, China, it is very rare and most likely you will see a lot of Asian people. So at least tell me one reason why Square Enix, a Japanese company, wants to make a game with black people from America. I mean, sure, if they have a great idea about a story and if they want to show some love to the black fans from America, go right ahead. I support creativity. I want to see people try new stuff. But I think we all know this is not what Square Enix wants to do. First of all, Square Enix has an ethics department that focuses on discriminatory, prejudicial, or offensive content. Let's make this simple. Square Enix has a whole department that's paid a lot of money to cut and censorship stuff from your games. So when you pay like an idiot $70 instead of $60, it's never because games are too expensive now. It costs so much to make. It's because the idiots hire an ethics department to cut from the game everything that they think it's offensive. So a small gaming company uses the money to make the game that you want. A huge gaming company like Square Enix uses the money to censorship and cut stuff from your games. The ethics department said,
"The fact that my work went unnoticed by the users after the game was released also means that I did my job correctly."
First of all, how the fuck do they know that? Do they read my mind? Do they have a microphone in my house and hear me say something? What if people think it was something cringe? Or maybe they ignore it because they think it was a bad translation or because it was a mistake. I see a lot of issues in translations, but I don't go on the internet complaining about it and talking all day long. Also, I don't have the original, so I don't know if the original was also bad or the translation made it bad or the ethics department. So if nobody notices your work, does your work even matter? Doesn't somebody need to notice that you're doing a great job and to tell you that? Especially if that somebody is the customer. Let's say I work at the ethics department. And in 1 year, for example, let's say I just make some boobs smaller. I cut some words that I found offensive in some dialogue. And I use some cringe words like non-binary instead of crossdresser. There you have it. That's the whole work for 1 year. This is the reason you have a whole ethics department. This is the reason your games are very expensive. This is the only reason you think your games should be over $70, because of the useless ethics department. And let me tell you a secret. A lot of people know about this stuff, but most of them will not tell you because they don't care for Twitter, they don't have a Twitter account, they don't care for other social media, they don't even go to review the game. You will just notice that you didn't sell the copies expected. Or if people noticed after they bought the game, they will not buy games from you in the future. So again, why do you even need an ethics department if they say the work needs to be unnoticed? Because it must be two reasons for the ethics department to want this. If somebody says, what the fuck does the ethic departments do? Do we even need it? Then they come and say, well, that's the idea, our work needs to be unnoticed. So clearly we are doing our job if you didn't notice that we do our job. Or the other reason will be, if the gamers found out, they will not like it. So no matter how you put the problem, the ethics department is useless. Never mind, it's not useless, it makes the game worse. It makes the game boring. The ethics department also says,
Although I work behind the scenes, when a game I was involved in is released and is highly acclaimed, I feel as my work is being praised, which makes me happy.
so not only that they are useless, and they make a lot of people not buy the game because of their censorship and modifications, they think people praise their useless work just because they praise the game. So never mind the level designers, the level artists, the programmers, the writers who actually worked at the game and made it fun and interesting. The ethics department think they are important because they deleted or changed some stuff that nobody wanted to be deleted or changed. This is why I hate people when they say, oh, games are very expensive these days, oh, this is why they need to be $70 or more. Yeah, because of what? Because of ethics department who wants to delete stuff. Because of diversity trainings. Because of the people who are only hired to say what's offensive and what's not offensive. Anyway, did you notice that Square Enix is starting to make boring games? Games just like Ubisoft. Games that have no story. Games that are full of useless stuff. Well, now you know the reason. Because they care more about an ethics department than what the players say. This is the main reason why I sold my Final Fantasy VII Remake. And this is the main reason why I will avoid buying games from Square Enix. Or if I buy them, I will play the old ones. And I bet you the next part 2 of Final Fantasy VII will be trash. Because part 1 kind of respected at least a little the original. But I think part 2 will never do that. And this is why we will see a lot of trash. Chrono Cross was already released. It's a remake or whatever. I was interested in buying this game because I thought that it's the same old game with enhanced textures and maybe the controls improved a little. But no. I saw a lot of people with PlayStation 5 complaining because the game is not very stable. And a lot of people on Steam also complaining because the game is not stable. And it's not a good PC port. But apparently, instead of changing this, Square Enix thinks it's a good idea to pay the ethics department to cut stuff and modify stuff. Because that's why I buy games from them. To get censorship. So for example, in a dialogue saying,
I heard you totally blew off Lena this morning. I didn't think you had it in you.
the text was longer and they deleted the part when she also said,
That was real gutsy of you. I guess that kind of shows her who's boss, huh?
do you see how useless the ethics department is? And because of them, I saw that even the Japanese version was changed. Because as they said, they want to make sure that you don't find out they did it. Please tell me a reason why they are paid to do this. Why it was so important to not fix the game, but instead it was important to change this text. Because it said that kind of shows her who's boss. That was the problem. It was so many people who was offended by this. Fuck you, Square Enix. Next is where it's a dialogue when she says,
Could you make her be a little nicer to me?
and the original was,
Could you break her in a little? You know, make her act a little more ladylike?
why? Because she said she wants her to act more ladylike. Are you that butthurt about ladylike? This is why Square Enix wants to milk so much money out of you. Because they want to pay this useless ethics department. And they are paid a lot of money. And they don't do shit. Tell me, how did they make the game better by doing these changes? Okay, next two changes are something like,
But you have to be confident to that extent, as expected, yeah.
and this is what I'm talking about. I'm not even sure what was the censored version or modified version. I always guess that if something contains the word man or ladylike, then that's the changed version. I mean the original version that they wanted changed. For example, the second text says that I think it's the original.
But you have to be confident to that extent, as a man, yeah.
I guess this was the original because it contained the word man. I have no idea. Again, like I said, the ethics department is useless, but they still get paid a lot of money. This is where your $70 go, not to the developers. So stop saying that the developers who want $70 for the game deserve that $70 because they don't. Because this is what they do with your money. Next text says,
Now Big Brother Surge should put her in her place and tell her to act more like a woman.
and the other version is...
Now Big Brother Surge should put her in her place and tell her to be nicer.
So now it seems the first was the original, because they told her to act more like a woman. Anyway, when I saw the version from the game, it was ladylike, not woman, but whatever. And they also added some new pantsu, because for some reason somebody had a problem with the original ones. And I bet it was only the ethics department. So now back to our story when President Yosuke Matsuda says if Japanese developers imitate Western games, they will not be able to produce good ones. Well, fuck you again. We prefer Japanese stuff because it's more edgy. We don't want it to be changed. We don't want any ethics department to make content that it's modified for the Western audience. If we want that crap, we will play Ubisoft games. And again, are you sure the Square Enix president is not an idiot? Or he has no idea what games he makes? Because Forsaken is exactly that. A game that imitates Western games. And it's a cheap imitation. I didn't saw anything special about the game. The story is bad, the gameplay is bad. The game looks awful. It's a cheap imitation. And please tell me, why did the Japanese company, Square Enix, wanted to make a game about black people? Is it because every corporation ever likes virtue signaling these days? Unless it's not China or another country that doesn't want that. But in the rest of the world, of course they only want LGBTQ and black people. So isn't it strange that Square Enix, a Japanese company, suddenly wants to make a game about black people? Or with black people, whatever. Well, at least they didn't make the next Final Fantasy only with black people. I guess that is something new, because usually the Western games just change the color or the gender of somebody. I mean, they reuse an IP that's already known and they change it. And Square Enix did something new, so I guess it's okay. Whatever, it's still not okay, because they clearly didn't do a great job. I mean, maybe I'm wrong. Maybe when the game is released, it will have a great story and great gameplay. But from what I saw, the game is trash. The story doesn't seem to be anything interesting. And if you told me that it was made by Ubisoft, I will believe it. Square Enix is not doing very good lately. And I think they will start doing even worse. Because, yeah, they want an ethics department. They say they don't want to imitate Western games, but that's exactly what they are doing. I don't know other Japanese company that tries to imitate Western games. At least not at the same level as Square Enix. In Final Fantasy 15 they even did a DLC with Assassin's Creed. Again, what the fuck is wrong with Yosuke Matsuda? Does he have no idea what Square Enix does? Is he really the president? Or the ethics department is the one in charge? I would have zero issues with a game like Forspoken if it didn't look like a Ubisoft game. And I don't have an issue only with Forspoken. I have an issue with almost all Square Enix games, at least the new ones. Final Fantasy 15 was garbage. Too much fillers, too much of Ubisoft game, and the story was very boring because of the fillers. The newest Final Fantasy game, and I actually forgot the name, I had to search it, and it's Final Fantasy Origin, was trash. I used to be a huge Final Fantasy fan, but after Final Fantasy 15, I got very disappointed. It was nice to finally see Final Fantasy 7 Remake, but I don't like how the game is going. It looks like they will start to change everything that was nice with Final Fantasy 7. And I don't care, I will play the original, but it's sad to see that we didn't get a good remake. And I think we will see that in part 2. Long story short, Square Enix president Yosuke Matsuda should shut the fuck up. He has no idea what he's talking about, and maybe it's time for him to check what the fuck his company is doing, or he should check his brain, because clearly is something wrong with him. Or maybe it was a bad translation. Maybe he's saying that we should imitate Western games more, because that would make sense. That sounds like something Square Enix does. Let's just hope at least Forspoken will be a good game. I doubt it. It's nice that it's a new IP and they didn't make Final Fantasy with black characters. I mean, they didn't try to use the Final Fantasy IP to sell a game, and they risked to make a new IP with black characters. But it's sad to see that it looks like they didn't work very much at the story. But I hope I'm wrong, and I hope the game is good. I just don't think Square Enix will make good games anymore. But it's a big company, maybe there are still some teams in Square Enix that makes good games. Even so, if the ethics department comes and says, oh, this game is problematic, you need to change everything, then it doesn't matter if a team is good. When you try to do your job and make a game fun, and let's be real, a fun game usually has a lot of edgy stuff or controversial stuff. You will never be able to do whatever you want because you know the ethics department will come and they will say, oh no, we cannot have fun in games. We cannot say controversial stuff. We must cut everything that's fun. We must make a game that nobody will notice, that nobody will remember, or that they will remember as a very boring game. So I don't think Square Enix will continue making good games anymore. And even if they will make a good game, I'm pretty sure they cut a lot of stuff from that game. Stuff that made the game even greater. So as long as they have an ethics department and they continue to sell us a game that's not finished or it's a bad PC port and even a bad PlayStation 5 game, and instead of fixing that they insist on cutting dialogue or changing it, I think that company doesn't deserve any money from us until they fix their shit.